Good afternoon, everyone. We are back again with financial market operations. So let's start off from where we left. Today we need to focus on the Macaulay duration. We had some part of it left, the calculation. So today we're going to focus on that and move on to modified duration, and we should be able to finish off the debt capital market chapter today. So before we move on to this section of it, let me recap on what we did last week. Why this recap is important to you, just for you to refresh your memory before you get into the Macaulay duration calculations today. Okay. So last week our focus was on we saw the bond valuation, and then we saw what were the factors that are influencing a bond's price. Okay, bond valuation, what was the result of it? By valuing a bond, we were able to identify the price of that particular bond. What is the real or the intrinsic value of that bond? Okay, depending on that, we were also able to identify whether a bond is overpriced or underpriced. That was clear for us. Okay, but we know that or not all bonds have the same prices. The prices of the bonds vary. What are the reasons for those, or what are the factors which influence the bond price? You have the features of the bond causing these differences in the prices. So what are the features with relating to a bond? You have coupon rate differences, you have the yield provided by the bond, or then you have the tenor, the time to maturity. Okay, now these three, you don't have to remember or memorize how they influence the bond price, but if you could understand the logic behind it, you should be able to relate it. Now, simply coupon rate is like the interest that is paid to you during that investment period. Okay. So, when you have a bond which is going to give you a higher coupon, or there are two bonds, one bond carries a higher coupon rate than the other. What is more valuable from the point of view of an investor is the bond which carries the higher coupon rate. Why? He or she would get a higher coupon amount each month or semi-annually compared to the other bond. Okay, so higher the coupon, higher the price of the bond, or higher the value of the bond. Now remember, this higher the coupon, higher the price of the bond is subject to a disclaimer. What is this disclaimer? While all the others remain unchanged. Now in each of these factors that we are seeing, you should remember, when all the other factors are constant and only this variable changes, this is what the impact would be on the bond price. Okay. When you go to required rate of return or the yield, what is yield? Yield to maturity, remember we covered that under bond terminology. Yield to maturity is the holistic return earned by the investor by holding that bond until its maturity. So you have all the cash flows relating to the bond considered when you calculate your yield. Yield is like your holistic return. It will include coupon, and if there is any capital gain or a capital loss, it will include both of those. Okay. Yield is also sometimes referred to as a required rate of return. Now, what does yield, or how does yield impact the bond price? If a bond has a higher yield, okay, if a bond has a higher, there are two arguments to it. So I'm going to explain you the logic behind both these arguments. Okay, so listen to it carefully. So you have First, let's focus on this higher the yield. So yield is essentially the holistic return that you get from a bond. Okay. Higher the yield, which means higher the holistic return of a bond, lower the price of the bond. What does it mean? We know yield is the holistic return. So it will have coupon rate plus or minus a capital gain or a capital loss. Which means, what is capital gain or capital loss? The price that you paid to buy the bond, and on maturity, the par value that you're getting. You will get a gain if you had bought the bond at a discount to its par value. You will have a loss if you have bought the bond at a price higher than the face value. Remember the discount bond and the premium bond that we discussed? Okay. So if an investor is to earn a higher yield, then definitely there can't be a capital loss. There has to be a capital gain. Higher the yield, meaning coupon also has to be higher. On the other side, the gain also has to be higher. Okay. So for the gain to be higher, we know the discount amount should be higher, which means the price of the bond should be at a very low level for you to get that higher discount. Okay, that's why higher the yield, lower the price of the bond. That is the first logic when you talk about the term yield. Okay, but if someone says it or words the term yield as the required return. Okay, so if I say, if I have to invest in this bond, I require a holistic return of this much. Again, for me to get that return, not only coupon, sometimes the gain will also have to support. Then also, for me to have a higher gain, I need to buy the bond at a very lower price than its par value or the face value. Okay, so again, higher the required return, lower the value of the bond. Finally, we have time to maturity. The simple logic behind that you need to understand is, we are all rational investors. Okay. So as rational investors, think about this. One of your friends is borrowing money from you. There are two friends approaching you to borrow money. One is telling you, I will pay you in 1 week's time. Okay, he's coming to borrow 10,000. Both are asking for 10,000. One is saying, in 1 week's time I will pay. Another one is coming and saying, I actually at least need 1 year for me to pay you back this 10,000. As a lender, what is more risky for you? The money that is going to come back in 1 week, or the money that is going to take 1 year? Obviously, the money that is going to take 1 year. Why? Your friend can go missing, your friend can run away with the money, your friend will come back with a new excuse, or when he pays back the 10,000, the value of that 10,000 would be very less. Okay. If it's 1 week, you can quickly follow back with the friend if he's not paying back and take quick action. If not, you would wait for 1 year, and after that, if you take action, you will be, sometimes you might lose your entire amount that you lent. Okay, that is the human logic. When we give money to someone else, sooner we get it, safer we feel. Okay, so similar to that, in time to maturity, what happens? If a particular bond has a longer time to mature, that bond will have a very low value or very low price. Why? We know longer time to maturity meaning, now if you take a bond, what is the most significant cash flow that comes from a bond? Which is the par value in terms of the amount. That's the highest that you will get. That is the repayment of the face value. You will get coupons which are smaller amounts, but repayment of the face value is the largest cash inflow you will have. Okay. Now, this largest cash inflow will happen on maturity. Now, when it's going to get dragged and longer, you are going to face a higher risk. Why? Your largest cash inflow is getting delayed and delayed. Okay. So you will be facing higher risks. There can be higher default risk involved. There's a lot of uncertainty because of the longer tenor. To compensate for that increased uncertainty or the risk, the issuer will have to give the bond at a very even though the face value is high, but they will have to price the bond at a very low value to attract investors, to market saying, look here, you buy this bond, you will get a higher discount. Face value is so much, but I am pricing this bond at only this value. Okay. Lower the value of the bond so that it will compensate the investor for the increased risk or the increased uncertainty they face. Okay. So this is how the bond prices change due to the changes in the bond's features. Okay. So then we saw the premium par and the discount bond. That was rather simple, but remember this. What is the main decision making point? What is the main features that you compare for you to know whether it's a premium par or discount? You will compare the coupon rate against the yield. Okay, coupon rate against the yield. An easier way that you could go through is, now I have told you. Okay, why is this getting cut off? Yield. Okay, so now yield, I told you, it's the holistic return, would include your coupon and your gain or a loss. Okay. Now, for the first one, what was the scenario? Coupon is high. Now, we know these two together should result in the yield. Okay. It's a formula. So, if your coupon is higher, let's say coupon yield has to be, let's say 10%. Now, your coupon is 11%. We know that the yield is 10. Coupon is higher than the let's take coupon is higher than the yield. Okay, this is not writing well. Okay. First scenario we saw coupon is higher than the yield. Now I logically told you when the coupon is higher than the yield, there'll be so much of demand to this bond. Why? It's a higher coupon bond. You were under the impression of the yield can also be looked at the view from a rate of return. So as an investor, the rate of return that you required was only 10, but this bond is giving you 11. So you will be very motivated to buy this bond. Not only you, so many other investors would want to buy this bond. So when the demand increases, price of the bond will start to get higher than its face value. Then it will be a premium bond. Okay. On a mathematical way, you could see if it's 11 and 10, end of the day, here you will have to face a loss situation. Okay. If it's a loss of 1% only, this will tally off. What do you mean by loss or gain here? You're comparing the face value against the price of the bond. Okay. You're comparing these two. Price versus, okay, for some reason the pen is not working. Let's go with the mouse. It's easier. The price versus the, no, this is face value against the price. So you will have to earn at a loss. You're even willing to take up this loss. Why? The coupon is higher. Let's say coupon is only 8. Again, yield is at 10. Then we know, not enough. This is not adequate. Logically, what did we say? When the coupon is lesser than the yield, the investor anticipated or wanted 10%, but the person is only giving 8, which means the coupon return alone is not enough. The investor requires another gain to compensate, which means a gain has to come in here. A discount has to be given. So if it's a gain, what happens? Price is lower than the face value of the bond, which will result in a discount bond. Third scenario, if the coupon is 10% and the yield is 10%, both are equal. Do you need to give a gain or a, sorry, do you need to have, do you have a requirement to give a gain or a loss? No. You can issue at the which means the price that you are issuing can be equal to the face value itself. Simple as this. And we went through the diagram, saw how the movement works. Then we moved into the most important topic that we have, the bond price sensitivity. Now, what is this bond price sensitivity? I told you, essentially what we are talking about here is the interest rate sensitivity. How is the bond's price reacting to the changes in the market interest rate? Okay, when the market interest rates or when the external environment returns are changing, how is this bond reacting? So we saw yield or interest has an inverse relationship to the bond price. We know that. Why? If I want a higher yield, I have to buy a bond which has a lower price. Okay, so there is an inverse relationship. But we don't know how sensitive each bond is, which means if I have two bonds, let's say I have, just for your view, for your imagination purpose, think these are two bonds. We know both these bonds, if the market interest rate is increasing, if the market interest rate is increasing, both these bonds prices will decline. Okay, I know that, you know that, everybody knows that. Why? Because there is an inverse relationship between these two elements. Okay, but one bond can have a reduction in the price which is lower than the other bond. Let's say market rates increased by 1%. One bond decreased in price by only 2%. Other bond decreased in price by 10%. Now both the bonds prices have declined, dropped. Okay, but you can see one bond lost 10% of its price. Other bond only lost 2% of its price. So what is being more sensitive would be this bond. Why? The decline is higher. Let's take another scenario. Market interest rates are declining. What is happening right now? Okay, so when the market interest rates are declining, what happens? Price of the bond will increase. Okay, so let's say market interest rate has fallen by 1%, which means both these bonds prices will now increase. But one bond's price increased only by 3%. Other bonds price increased by 20%. Now, what showed a very higher reaction? What reacted very significantly? This bond. Why? It had a higher reaction, 20% jump. This bond only reacted mildly. So again, I would say this bond has the highest sensitivity. How is the reaction happening? That is what we are going to measure here. Okay. So we know that it's a seesaw relationship. When one goes up, other has to go down. Okay. But some bond, when yield increases by, let's say, 1%, other one only declines by 2%. In another bond, even though the price yield increase is 1%, the decline in the price is very high. Okay, so we are going to see what are the reasons behind this. So again, we saw what were the reasons behind this. Again, difference in the bonds features. There we saw when the coupon between the two bonds are different, when the tenor between the two bonds are different, each of them will react differently to the general market changes. Okay, so when you have a higher coupon meaning it will give you a higher interest return. Okay, so in that background, when there is a change in the market interest rate, will you react suddenly? No. Already you are compensated. You are getting a higher return. So the investor wouldn't react drastically. But think if I'm holding a bond with a lower coupon rate and suddenly the market reacts, even for the slightest reaction, because I'm getting a lower coupon rate, my reaction would be drastic. Okay. Therefore, if you have a higher coupon rate, remember that bond is very valuable for us, then that particular bond will be less in price volatility. Okay. That is what I've mentioned here. Now, we saw the logic behind it. Then we did a calculation as well. There also you can see the bond with the lowest coupon had the highest reaction. So when there is a price increase, it had the highest price increase. When there was a price decline, it had the highest price decline. Okay. Then we saw the maturity. Remember the relationship we studied earlier? Longer the maturity, less valuable that bond is. So when the bond is less valuable and the market rates are changing, an investor will be sensitive to the market changes. Any tiny change in the market, he will quickly react. Why? He's scared. He knows that there is a lot of uncertainty in the market for this, that he has to face for this longer tenor bond. Okay, so even when there is a slightest change in the market, he will react quickly. Okay, so we can conclude that if a bond has a longer terms to maturity, it will have a low present value of the bond or low price, and also the sensitivity of that particular bond is very, very high. Even to a slight market change, that price of that bond will quickly change. Again, we prove that with a question. You can see when the coupon remains same and the tenor increased, it showed a very high change in the price. So with that, we concluded. Remember what the conclusion is, okay? we concluded bond price sensitivity. The bond price sensitivity is high if that bond has a low coupon or if that bond has a longer maturity. I want you to note down here because so many students get confused. Now, even in exam, they could reword the term bond price sensitivity differently. They could directly ask you what affects the bond price sensitivity. Or you can say what bond is sensitive to the market changes. What are the price sensitive bonds with by giving some answers in the MCQ, they can say choose the bond with the highest sensitivity or what has the highest price sensitivity. What portfolio will have a higher reaction? Okay, so you need to be ready even though they term it in any other way. Okay, now all these showed us what bond has the higher reaction, what has the lower reaction. Okay, but it didn't let us measure that reaction. Okay, now I know out of these two bonds that this bond has the highest reaction. Good. But what can I measure that reaction? Can I say this reacted by this amount? This reacted by this amount. I need a value to say, value to quantify that reaction. Okay. Therefore, for me to precisely calculate this sensitivity, the concept called duration came in. Remember, duration is how you measure bond price sensitivity or interest rate risk or interest rate changes. Okay. Now, duration had a little development stages in it. First one was the Macaulay duration. There, what was the first stepping stone into calculating duration? There, they only came up with an average time of the bond's cash flow. Essentially, they will give an answer which is in the term of time or years or maturity. Okay, so the answer, the value that you get is a answer or a value in terms of time. It will say this much of years, this much of months. Okay, so that helped us to measure the sensitivity between the bonds. Now again, longer the duration, higher the price sensitivity. I want you to highlight this. Remember, we are measuring sensitivity through duration. So if the sensitivity is high, duration has to be higher. Okay. Now in this Macaulay duration, what they started out was, they said fine. Remember the longer time to maturity, higher sensitive the bond is. Let's use that theory and let's calculate the weighted average time of the bond. So if I can calculate the weighted average time of the bond, I can decide what will get me my cash back quickly. Okay. So if a bond has a lower Macaulay duration, it will show that the cash inflows are higher, which means coupon is higher. And the effective weighted average time is also lower, which means the maturity is also lower, which will result in a low bond price sensitivity. So that's how they developed this Macaulay duration. Okay. What is the formula behind it? Let's first look at the formula behind it. You will take the present value of a particular cash flow, multiply it by the relevant time, and you will do that for each line item. Add all of it, that will be your numerator. Your denominator is essentially the cumulative of the present value of all the cash flows. Essentially, what am I talking about here? The price of the bond. This is the price of the bond. Okay. We saw this example last week. If there is a 1-year bond whose payment happens in such a manner, in the end of 6 months, you will get the coupon, and the end of 1 year, you will get another coupon and the face value. So how do you calculate the Macaulay duration? First, what is the first step? You need to find the present value of each cash flow. Okay, so you need to find the present value of this particular cash flow and present value of this particular cash flow. So present value of 40 rupees that you will get at the end of 6 months is 38.1. The present value of 1040 rupees which you will get at the end of 1 year is 943.31. Okay. Now using this, I am going to weight these two cash flows. Okay. I'm going to give a weightage for each of them according to their time. Okay. Now, at the end of 6 months, out of this entire price of the bond, what is the price of the bond? I have to add these two, which is 981.41. Okay, out of 981.41, which is the price of the bond, at the end of 6 months, the investor gets 3.88% of it. Good. At the end of 1 year, he gets 96.12%. So what period has the highest weightage? 1. Okay, why? The highest cash flow comes in this particular period. Now, I have calculated the weightages. Now, I need to multiply this weightage against the time. Now, simply, I will multiply half by 3.88%, 1 by 96.12. That is what I have done here. Okay. By using the weightage and provide that weightage to the relevant time, I can find the Macaulay duration. Now here the Macaulay duration is 0.98. Okay. We saw last week, if a bond has 0 coupon, there is no coupon, then the maturity of the bond is equal to the Macaulay duration. Why is that happening? Because if there is no interim coupon, there is no part of the price coming early. The entire price will come only on maturity. So the weightage here becomes 100% to 1 year here. If you take this example. Okay. So simply, if the bond has no coupon payment, or if it's a 0 coupon bond, then the maturity equals to the Macaulay duration. But if there is a coupon, like in this situation, if there is a coupon, definitely Macaulay duration is lower than the maturity of the bond. Now here the maturity of the bond is 1 year, but Macaulay duration is only 0.98. Yes, if you approximate it, it will be 1. But we know if you take the full form, you don't have to wait the entire 1 year, because you're getting part of the price early. Therefore, the weighted average time is lesser than the maturity of the bond itself. Okay. Now we'll be going through a bit of questions just for you to have a knowledge on the calculation. This is a simple one that we have. Consider a 3-year 10% coupon bond selling at 107.87 with a yield of 7%. Coupon payments are made annually. Find the Macaulay duration of the bond. Now here, first, what is the role? We need to find the present value of each cash flow. Okay, first of all, we need to do that. If you can, just write down those steps. First, find the present value of each cash flow. Then add up all of that. That will give you the price of the bond. Okay, and then you come to the Macaulay formula. Now here, 10% coupon coming annually for 3 years. And at the 3rd year, you will get your face value as well. Okay, face value is, of course, if it's 107.87, we know face value can't be odd figure, it has to be 100. And we can also see here coupon is 10%, yield is 7. So definitely price has to be higher than the face value. Now, these are the ways how you can check a question, check your answers. Okay. So the face value of the bond is 100. So in the first year you will get 10. Second year you will get 10. Third year you will get 10 plus face value of 100, 110. So I'm using the discount formula, just like how we use for bond valuation, and found the present value of each cash flow. Then simply add all of this and you will get the price of the bond. Excellent. Now what do we do? Now in the example here, I told you the best way that I could explain it to you. How can we do it? We can weight this particular cash flow against the price and multiply it to the time. So 9.35 divided by 107.87 will tell out of the entire price how much am I getting in the first year, like in a percentage terms. Okay, so after I get that percentage term, I will weight the time according to those percentages. So I will calculate the time here is 1 year. So 1 is weighted at that. Second year is weighted according to the cash flow that is coming in the second year. Okay, so that's how we have done here. Now here it's a direct approach. We have done the entire calculation at once. 9.35 divided by 107.87 into 1. Same thing, 8.73 divided by 107.87 into 2. 89.79 divided by 107.83 into 3. We add all of these together, you will get your answer. Macaulay duration as 2.7, closer to 75 years. Remember, because it's Macaulay duration, your answer is always in years. Okay. Again, you can see, even though the maturity is 3 years, the Macaulay duration of the bond is 2.75, shorter than the maturity. Why? Because it's a coupon earning bond. Okay. Now we are going to see, we did a calculation. Now remember, duration is how we measure the bond price sensitivity. So what we are going to see here is, we are going to see whether duration is reacting to each of the changes in the features. Okay. Now in your practice question, these are questions for you to try alone. I told you come up with your doubts. If you have, mention them in the chat. We'll look into that. The first question is like the base question. Okay. You have a 4-year bond with 10% coupon paid semi-annually and an 8% yield. You need to find the duration of this particular bond. So when you calculate, you will get 3.42 years. Okay. Next, what are we going to do? Same, all the factors are same, but now we are going to change the coupon only. We are going to decrease the coupon. Now, when we decrease the coupon and calculated the duration, you can see duration has increased. What does that tell you? Lower coupon, lower bond value, higher price sensitivity, essentially higher duration. Okay. Why? Because the bond is not that valuable. It will only give you 6% coupon, whereas earlier it was giving 10% coupon. Okay. Or another bond is giving a 10% coupon. All right. So that relationship you can see from 3.42. Now the sensitivity or the duration has increased to 3.6 years. Now next, what are we going to do? Again, the base scenario remains the same and we are going to change one factor. What are we going to do? We are going to change the yield. We are going to increase the yield to 10%. What is the yield? Yield is the cumulative return that you will get from a bond. Okay. If the cumulative return from a bond is increased, okay, or is higher. Now, in this particular bond, you have two bonds. One bond is only giving you the cumulative return of 8%. Another bond is giving you a cumulative return of 10%. And in the market interest rates are changing. What bond will react? Now, this relationship we didn't go through earlier. Understand what I'm trying to explain here. We did not go through how the yield will impact on the price of the bond if the market rates are changing. The very first slide that we saw here, remember the disclaimer? While all else remains unchanged. Okay. Now, all else is remaining unchanged except the market interest rate. So here market interest rates are changing. You have two bonds with two different yields. Here you can see. Now think about this. If a bond has a higher yield, what does it mean? It is giving a higher coupon and that bond also is giving you a gain. That's like the indication there is some return. It's the cumulative return of that bond is high. Okay. There is another bond giving only 8%, which means the cumulative return of the bond is only 8%. So the 10% cumulative return is only the highest one. Okay. And if the market rates are changing, will you react if you have a bond with a higher yield? Similar to the coupon thinking, if my coupon rate is high, will I react for a change in the market? No. Just like that, if I have a bond which has a higher yield rate, okay, the cumulative return of that bond is higher, then whatever happens in the market, maybe I'll react a bit, but my reaction is not that strong. So that relationship you can see here. Earlier, when a bond has 8% yield, duration was 3.42, higher duration. But there is another bond, all features are same, but yield is 10. That has a duration of 3.39. Okay, so there you can see the sensitivity is lower when you have two bonds with two different yield rates in a changing market environment. Okay. Next, what are we going to see? We are going to see a change in the tenor. Base scenario remains the same. We are going to change the tenor here. 3 years. without doing any calculation, you should be able to tell you, because the tenor has decreased, duration is less, and the bond is less price sensitive. Think of it as two bonds. One bond is 4 years, another bond is 3 years. Obviously, the 3-year bond is less price sensitive. That we can see in our answer as well. Duration is only 2.67. The 4-year bond has a 3.42 duration. So again, the less price sensitivity is evident. Okay. I have included another variation here for you, just for your knowledge purpose. This is in case they test you. Okay. Now take this scenario. Okay, this scenario, and I change the frequency of getting my coupon. Now for all other calculation, I used A as the base scenario. Just for E, I'm using D as my base. Okay, by if it's 4 years, I have to do a longer calculation. 3 years was very much easier. Okay, so for a 3-year, now you have two bonds. Everything is the same, but one bond is paying me the coupon, even the coupon rates are same. But one bond is paying me the coupon semi-annually. Another bond is paying me the coupon annually. But everything else is identical. Will the duration change? Of course. Why? Because one bond at the end of 6 months, I got some return. Okay. But in the other bond, I have to wait for 1 year for me to get my return. Now, my inflow has been delayed. So when my inflow is delayed, I will have higher reactions to any of the market changes. So sensitivity is high and the duration is higher. So you can see here, a bond, all of the features are the same, but a semi-annual paying bond gives you me duration of 2.67. But if the payment happens annually, the sensitivity is higher. Therefore, the duration is higher. Therefore, duration is higher. So I compare the 2.74 with the 2.67. Don't compare it with this. Okay, I'm only changing the frequency in these. Okay. So this is how that you can see the relationships even through your answers. Okay. Okay, no questions, but I hope you all tried individuals in all these questions alone at least, because if you can, even after this class, try it on your own, because it's a bit difficult. I've not seen much questions in your papers, but that doesn't mean it won't appear. You know, if you have seen the past papers, even for other papers, the pattern has been changing always. You can't always look at a past paper and study for the next exam. You need to have the knowledge now. You need to be able to use your logic, use your basic fundamentals when you come for your exams nowadays. Okay. So when you're doing these calculations, you will definitely have issues. Okay. So if you had done it, I'm going to explain it to you thinking that you have done the questions. Okay. Now, if you have done this, you would know that this t variable is a bit different. Okay. Now, in this Macaulay duration formula, remember this t is bit of a different case, because earlier in the bond valuation. In the bond valuation, what was I using? We were using N. What was N? N is relatively, you're talking about the period. Each period is termed as N. But here, T meaning the time. The timing is what you're focusing at. So if you're getting a cash flow, let's say every 6 months, okay, now in this question, okay, I'm unable to minimize this screen for some reason. Okay, I can't multitask on both the screens for some case. Let's try to minimize this at least, hopefully. That should be good. So you have the question on top and then you have the methodology here. So we are looking at a 4-year bond with 10% coupon paid semi-annually with a 8% yield. Now remember, in Macaulay duration, we use a term called T, which is timing. Earlier, we used the term N. When we use the term N, we were essentially giving each period a number. Now, if it was 4 years and the payment is happening semi-annually, we said N is equal to 8. Why? 4 into 8, which is the 8 periods. You have cash flow coming in 8 periods. So that's what we have denoted here. First period is 6 months, the first 6 months. Second period is the second 6 months, essentially after 12 months. Okay, like that, so forth. We have given a number for each period. Okay, but T is a bit different. T, we are talking about timing, correct? So if it's a 4-year bond, the T here has to be 4. Okay. How for each period it will change is, now you have to give in decimal form. Half yearly, 1 year, 1.5 year, 2 year, 2.5, 3, 3.5, 4. This is how you will time it as T. Okay. This is what that you will use. Just for your knowledge purpose, again, try to mark it some in your notes somewhere else. These are the factors that you need to remember. Okay, but let's say mistakenly, out of your practice, because you have practiced so much, you have accidentally inserted N and have done the question. No worries, but when you come to this part of it, now if I have used N, sorry, if I have used N, I have to multiply my cash flow into N, correct? So you can see this value changing, the present value of the cash flows multiplied by T is not the one here. Now you have multiplied it accidentally by N. What you could do is, you could divide this again by 2 and get the same answer. Okay, or let's say you haven't done that, also you have calculated your final answer as this. Still, Divide this final answer again by 2 for you to get your answer. Okay. So this will be essentially the final answer that you need to put in case you have used the term in instead of t, okay, in your calculations. All the others are fairly normal. Again, remember the steps we did. We first calculated the present value of the cash flows when it comes to the Macaulay duration, present value of each cash flows, and then you add all the cash flows to find the price of the bond. So price of the bond is essentially this. This will be the denominator. Numerator would be 1. Each cash flow, each present value of each cash flow is now multiplied against time. So 48 into 0.5, you will get 24, like that. Each present value of each cash flow is multiplied by the relevant time to get the numerator. Finally, when you divide that by the price, you should be getting the duration. Okay. Now here you can see even though the entire tenor is 4, you effectively get back most of your cash flows prior to that. Okay, most of your cash flows on an effective basis is relatively higher. Same thing here. Even though tenor is 4, you will get most of your cash flows on a relatively earlier period. Why? Here, the yield was, in this question, the yield has changed. Remember, you're talking about a high yield bond. Because you have a high yield bond, the sensitivity is less. Remember? Okay, therefore, duration is also less. Sorry. Duration is also less. This is an essential way for you to practice the Macaulay duration. So do each of it on your own and try to get at the same answer. And at this, I want you to, when we discussed about the yield, I want you to put a note here and write it down as if two bonds are compared with varying yield rates. Okay, then the bond with the highest yield rate will have the lowest sensitivity. Okay. That is a learning that you should get from here. In case two bonds are compared, where all the factors are same, but the all-inclusive yield is a bit higher. Okay. And that will essentially tell you if a bond, now we know if a bond has a higher yield and the market changes occur, the sensitiveness is very, very low, which means you're satisfied with the return. Sorry, you're satisfied with the return, therefore you don't react much. Sorry. So there's a summary from the question. Summary from the question is that if you have a higher duration, which means you are more that particular bond has higher price sensitivity, then that bond will have these features. Now you have to remember all of these features. Why? In a MCQ, it becomes very, very helpful. You can save a lot of your time. Now, easier way for you to remember that is, remember, except for the maturity, all other three has to be lower. Okay, all other three has to be lower. Only maturity has to be higher. So for higher duration, higher maturity, all the others have to be lower. So essentially, only maturity has a positive relationship with the bond price sensitivity or the duration. All the others are inversely related. They have an inverse reaction. That is what is highlighted here. Okay. Now this table, if you can draw this table anywhere, any place, that's the best. Why? Just by looking at this table, you should be able to mark your MCQ questions. In case you can't develop this table, use the logic. Okay? Use the rationale, that the understanding of a rational investor. You should be able to build up this table on your own. Okay? And apart from this, now we are talking about two similar bonds which have these features different. Okay? But if we take two bonds, which are, one bond is a fixed rate bond and another bond is a floating rate bond. Remember, I discussed this when we came to interest rate risk. What bond has higher interest rate risk? Is it a fixed rate bond or a floating rate bond? When the market prices are changing, obviously the floating rate bonds rate will also change. Why? The rate is floating. Depending on the benchmark, that rate will also move. So essentially, the benchmark is a market interest rate, correct? So if the market interest rate is changing, obviously the benchmark will move. When the benchmark is moving, the floating rate bond will also change. So if I have a floating rate bond and the market interest rates are changing, I won't react much. Why? I know my bond is reacting according to the market price changes. So I won't lose anything. I knew that and I invested in a floating rate bond. But imagine if I bought a fixed rate bond, which means my bonds return, the return is fixed. It's not going to change according to the market interest rate. So I buy a bond which has a fixed return of 5%. Okay. But in the market, now the rate has moved from 5 to 15. Am I on a losing end? Definitely. Why? My rate, my coupon rate or the fixed rate is not going to change at all. So the value of that bond is going to be very much low. So higher price sensitivity, essentially leading to higher duration. That is what we have mentioned here. Fixed rate bonds have a higher duration than the floating rate bonds. With disregarding all other features, if the basis of the coupon is changed, if one bond is having a fixed rate coupon and another bond is having a floating rate coupon, this is how the duration would change. Okay. Now we move to modified duration. Now Macaulay duration, what was the disadvantage of that? The answer is in years. Again, by doing this exercise, I can tell what bond is highly sensitive. I can tell how long it will take for my cash flows to come in. But can I quantify the reaction? I only know the effective time. I can't give a number to the reaction. Can I say when interest rate falls by 1%, this bond is going to change by this amount? I can't say that. I can say the effective years is only 3.4 years. Effective years is 3.6. Just the effective tenor can be communicated through Macaulay duration. Okay. To overcome this disadvantage, we had to modify the Macaulay duration. And that's how the modified duration came in. Now, this is an extension to the Macaulay duration. Okay. More towards a correct path in calculating the duration. Now, if you and I are investors, can you and I do all these elaborate calculations, calculate the Macaulay duration, and each time something changes, I say my portfolio has this much of Macaulay duration? It is quite difficult. I only know the years. I want to know the precise value of my sensitivity. So how do I adjust this Macaulay duration for me to get at this precise value of this duration? Simply Macaulay duration divided by 1 plus R is the yield to maturity. I will divide that by the number of payments per year, which means number of coupon payments or the periods of that year. Okay. If 1 year I'm getting semi-annual payment, K would be 2. If it's monthly payment, K would be 12. Okay. Number of payments for that bond in a year is taken as K. Okay. By adjusting Macaulay duration using this particular factor, I should be able to get the modified duration. Now, using this modified duration, what can I do? Now, I have a value. I have a number to show you. Look here. If the yield is changing or if the market rates are changing by this amount, my bond price will fall by this amount. I could easily calculate that change. Okay. How do I plug it in? For me to know the percentage change in the bond price, I know the percentage change in the yield. I have to simply multiply that percentage change in the yield or the market interest rate into the modified duration. Remember, modified duration changes from bond to bond. Okay. So in this particular bond, what is the modified duration? When I multiply that with the percentage change in the market interest rate, I will get the change in the bond price in a percentage form. Okay. If I want to know this in terms of rupees, what is the change in my portfolio, in my bond portfolio in rupee terms? Then simply I need to add another component here. I will multiply it by the current bond price. Then I will get the change in terms of a amount. Okay. Now, in this note, I hope you can see, I have inserted this negative sign. What is this negative sign? This negative sign essentially highlights the inverse relationship between bond price and the yield or the market interest rate. When the yield increases, price of the bond declines. Remember, to show that negative relationship, duration is always written as a negative amount. Okay, we need to remember that even though they give duration as just a number, we need to know when we insert that number in the formula, you have to add the sign as minus. Now you can see for me to calculate modified duration, I need to calculate the Macaulay duration. Why? I can only convert the Macaulay duration into the modified duration. They also came up with another way for you to arrive at the modified duration if you don't calculate the Macaulay duration. How do you do that? What they did was they used this particular formula. This entire formula is used. This entire formula they rearranged. So simply modified duration is percentage change in the price divided by percentage change in the yield. Okay, but don't forget there is always a minus sign here. There is always a negative sign here. Why? Always modified duration is negative. There's a negative relationship. So both of these should essentially give you the same answer. But one formula is there for you if you have given with the Macaulay duration, and another formula if you don't have the Macaulay duration and you just want to calculate how your portfolio is going to react to a change in price. Okay. So let's do a question on this quickly. A bond has a Macaulay duration of 7 years and has a yield of 5% with annual coupon payment. If the market interest rate goes up so that the yield goes up to 5.5, calculate the percentage change in the bond price. Calculate the new price of the bond if the earlier price was $9.90. Okay. So first, calculate the percentage change in the price. Percentage change. So change in the bond price in the percentage term is equal to modified duration, which is denoted with a minus sign, into the change in the yield. Now, have they given the modified duration? No. Have they given the percentage change in the bond price for you already? You don't know that. You have to calculate that. So you can't use this formula to calculate your modified duration. But they have given you the Macaulay duration. So you have to use the first formula. So Macaulay duration is 7. 7 divided by, remember the formulas? Macaulay duration divided by 1 plus R divided by K. See here, 1 plus R divided by K. So Macaulay duration was 7 divided by 1 plus R is, what is the R that you will use? Are you going to use the prevailing R, which is the prevailing yield, or the new yield? You have to use the prevailing yield rate. Okay. At the moment, because you need to know the modified duration of this bond. You don't want to know, it's not the change that you are looking at. You want to know the duration at the moment. So you will use the existing yield of 5%. So divided by K. What is K? Number of payments in a year. You can say, you can see here, annual coupon payment. Okay, annual coupon payment, which means payment per year is 1. So 5% divided by 1, essentially 5%. By solving this formula, you can get the modified duration. Again, that always remember you need to put the minus sign into percentage change in the yield. It's now 5.5. Earlier it was 5%. So 0.5% change in the yield. So 0.5% change in the yield will result in a change in the bond price of 3.3%, where the bond price will reduce by 3.3%. Okay. Calculate the new price of the bond. If the earlier price was 990, what you could simply do is, if earlier 990, you're going to lose 3.33% of it. Or 990 into 1 minus 3.3 will get you the new price. Or use the elaborate formula. You have all this modified duration into the change in yield into the bond price, which is minus 3.33 into 990 will get you the change in the bond price as negative 33 rupees. Now that is only the change. You need to find the new price of the bond. So old price 990 plus this negative 33 will get you the new price of the bond as 957 rupees. Always read the question what they are asking. Here it's the new price of the bond that they require. Okay. So with that, we are done with duration, but not completely done. Now duration, yes, had its limitation. We could first we were only able to find what bond was sensitive. Second one, we moved into duration, but gave me the duration in years. So I still wanted a precise number. And now here I have modified duration, which is giving me the precise number. Now, using this, I can tell, if anyone is asking, here you can see, by using, let's take this particular example itself. If this bond has a change in yield of 0.5%, the bond price will change by 3.33%. Okay. So that is a general statement. So I will say, irrespective at any point, if the yield changes from 0.5%, the bond price will change by 3.33. Okay, it's like a linear statement that I'm making. Irrespective, across all situations, the impact is same. That is how the duration does the calculation. Which means, irrespective of, even though the change happens in any particular point, the impact on the bond price is only 3.33. Okay, there won't be any significant deviation. But on research, it was found that that's not the case. Okay, if this was plotted, the duration answers were plotted, it came up with a very linear relationship. Let's say from 1 to 1.5 yield change, still bond price will change by 3.33. From 1.5 to 2, the price changing, it's a very linear relationship that it's indicated. But in reality, the relationship between the bond price and the yield is inverse, and it is convex in nature. It is not a linear relationship. Okay, it's not a linear relationship. I can't say 0.5 change in the yield will get me the bond price of this amount, and that won't remain constant in all the price points, all the yield points. It will change according to the situations. Okay, so that's what the result of the researchers was. In the ancient studies, that were empirical studies that were done, gave out the answer as, look here, the relationship between bond price and the interest rate, or bond price and the yield, is not linear as what is shown by duration. It is convex in nature. So when it's convex in nature, duration is unable to measure the exact change in the interest rate. Now let's go to this diagram. Change in the bond price, sorry. If you go to this diagram, here you can, let's assume that you're here at the moment. Okay. Take a point where the linear and the convex give the same result. Okay. You're here at the moment. From this particular yield rate has increased. This is the yield rate, this is the price. Okay. Yield rate is now increased. This is the new point. Okay. This is the new point. Now, according to duration. Okay. Now, what is the duration model saying? This is the duration model's answer. Okay. Duration model gives the answer as this. So, according to the duration model, when yield rate changes from this particular point to here, price has now come down to this level. This is the new price point. Earlier price was this amount. Let's say PO has now come to P1. This is the answer of the duration model. But in reality, according to the true relationship between the bond price and the yield, it's clear that this is the true relationship, which means bond price, the new bond price is here. Let's say P2. So even though the yield jumped from, let's say, A to B, the price declined only from PO to P2, according to the true relationship. But duration is saying, no, it reduced from PO to P1. It's showing a drastic drop. It's overblowing the decline. So what happens in the duration model is, when there is a big change in the yield, here it's a significant change in the yield, duration tends to overestimate the price decline. It will say, oh my God, the change in the yield is so much, the price decline is also very vast. But in truth, the price decline is not so much. So duration tends to overestimate the price decline. Okay. Same thing on the other end. When the yield decreases, let's say from A, it's decreasing to C. Okay. Let's take this point, it's easier. C. Let's take this as C. Okay. So when from A to C, when the yield decreases, it shows that earlier price was in PO. Now, according to duration, price is here. According to duration, price is here. Again, let's say P1. But the true relationship indicates that the price has increased by a much higher amount. P2. So what happens here is, when there is a yield reduction, when there is a yield increase, the decline in the price was overstated. But when the yield decreased and the price is increasing, duration tends to underestimate the price increase. No, price didn't go so up, the price increase is very less. So here you can see the true increase in the price is from PO to P3. It has increased by this much. Okay, it's a huge, very low. The increase is very significant, but duration is saying no. The increase is only this much. It's underestimating the price increase. So simply duration is being very conservative. If there is a gain, they are understating the gain. If there is a loss, they are overstating the loss. So duration had an issue when there was a yield change which is very significant, or when it's of high value. Therefore, duration can be used when you have small changes in interest rate, like this one, when it's moved from 5.5 to 5, when you have smaller changes. But if there is a drastic change, duration alone cannot be used. Why? You are not getting the correct answer. Why is it important? Not for your exam purpose, but for an investor, it makes a very big change. Now, if you take this diagram, the investor might feel, okay, even though the price yield decreased, according to duration, price increases only this much. So he might be not so motivated or not so happy. But in reality, the price change is very high. He is getting a much higher gain than what he realizes. Okay. So this makes a huge impact on investors. So when you have higher changes in the price, in the yield, it is suggested to use duration and another factor called convexity. Okay, so when you have, this is the impact on the bond price when there is a change in the yield using duration. But when you have a larger change in the yield, you will have to add another component or another factor for the convexity nature, just so that you will get the duration answer correct. Okay, how do you calculate this impact of convexity is given here. Always, if there is a question on convexity, they will provide the convexity factor. They will give the convexity degree. Okay, this into change in the yield squared will get you the impact of the convexity, and that has to be added to the duration that you calculate. That will allow you to get the more accurate change in the price when you have a larger change in the yield rate. Okay. So convexity is a final correction made to duration. Why? Duration as a measure was being very conservative. When there is a yield rate, market interest rates were increasing, obviously the bond price will decline. But duration showed the decline as a very larger decline. Okay. But when the yield rates or market rates declined and the price of the bond increased, which is very good to an investor, duration showed no, that increase is not so much. So don't get too happy. Okay, they were being very, duration as a measure is being very conservative rather than showing the true picture. Okay, so to correct this, whenever you have a larger change in the yield rate, you will include the factor for convexity. Okay, so with that, we are finishing the debt capital market and the debt capital market instrument lecture. Okay, I hope that was clear for you. There's a lot of debt capital, and the debt capital instrument is a highly tested topic in your exams, which has a very larger weightage. So look into that, practice the questions. Very, very important that you succeed in that topic. Okay. So with that, we are going to start off with the next chapter. So now we have done with the complete debt market. We saw the money market, which is the short-term market for debt instrument. Then we saw the debt capital market, which is the long-term market for debt instruments. Now we are done with debt. Okay, we are done with debt instruments. Now we are moving into equity and equity market and equity instruments. What is equity? Equity, we know, is different to debt. How? Debt is simply a credit. Simply you have to pay it back. Equity represents a share of the company or ownership over that company. So if you are the owner of the company, can you get your money back? You will get your profit, but can you get your investment back? Until you close down the company, you won't get your investment back. You will earn a return on your investment, but you won't get the investment back. Why? You own that company. You, as a owner, you can't say to the business, pay me my money back in 5 years. It's not a lending, it's not credit. You are the owner of the company. As the owner of the company, what is the return that you get? You get the profit of the company. So do you get the entire profit? No. That company has to retain a certain percentage for their growth. So essentially, only some part of that profit is paid out to the owner, which is called dividends. Okay, dividends is part of the profit which is paid out. These owners are also termed as shareholders, share of a company. Equity, unit of equity is denoted as a share. So holder of a share is termed as shareholders. Okay. Now this dividend payment, is it mandatory like interest payment? Now, if you had taken a loan from a bank and if you had not paid the interest for 2 months, will the bank let go? Are you allowed not to pay for 2 months? Never. They will call you back, follow up. Why didn't you pay back? Every other question. Okay. But when it's dividend, you are the owner of the company. You should be able to bear up any changes in the cash flow. Okay. Any changes in the business. So your dividends are not certain. If the company earns a profit and you have no reason to retain that profit entirely without any requirement, you can pay out a portion as dividend. If not, if there is a loss or if there is any future project coming in for which you need to deploy your own funds, then the company can stay away from paying dividends to the shareholders. So are the shareholders okay with that? Are they fine with not receiving their dividend? Most of them are. Why? Because they are aware that major part of their wealth comes from the capital gains. Okay, comes from the capital gains of that investment. You invest 1 million today in a project, that project does so well, market value goes to 10 million, let's say. then you get a capital gain of close to 9 million. Okay, that's the return that the investor would be keen on. Why? The growth is very high. The income growth can be very high. Can you get a dividend of such an amount? No. Dividend depends on the profits of the company. Unless the company makes exorbitant profit, you won't get such high dividends. Okay. So for a shareholder, return from a share comes from two ways. One, mainly it's the dividend. Secondly, you have from the price increase. When there is a price change or a capital gain, from that you will get a return. Now this capital gain can be a capital loss as well. Okay. Why are shares considered riskier than bonds? Now we know for a bond, what are the two cash flows? Coupon payment and repayment of the par value. Okay. Repayment of the face value on maturity. Similarly to shares, the return is cash inflows from the share is dividends, and when you sell the share, the capital gain that comes by the sale of the share. Okay. Now when you take dividend and bonds interest is certain. You always have to pay it back. You cannot default it. But dividend, you can delay it. The company can say, this year we are not paying. Sorry, next year maybe. That delay or postponement can be done for dividends. So one cash flow is uncertain for the shareholders. Okay. Now when you go to the next cash flow, for the shareholders, it's the capital gain. Now I told you that can be capital loss as well. Let's say the moment you come to sell your shares, the price is lesser than what you bought. Then what happens? The company is going to incur a capital loss. So you can see in a bond, there is no change as that. The face value of the bond will be repaid on maturity. There is no uncertainty in that. Uncertainty in the payment. Okay, I'm talking about uncertainty in that payment of the face value at the end of it. Now, in the shareholders, for the shares, that realization of your investment by selling it off in the market is doubtful, because the market price at that time can vary. So for shareholders, you can see they have only two ways to earn a return, and both of them are highly volatile and sensitive to the external factors. Okay. And because of that, shares are considered as highly risky than bonds or debentures. And another difference that you have between these two is shares do not mature. That share has no expiry date, no tenor. Now, when you have a loan, when you give out a loan, will you give a loan forever? No, it's a loan, which means you need to collect that money back at the end of the period. But in shares, no, you are the owner. You don't invest money to the business thinking in 6 years or in 10 years time you need to pay back my investment. No, you are the owner of that company. You should be able to invest more or put more money to run the business. Okay. So shares, when compared with bonds, do not have a maturity. That's why they do not fall into the money market as well. Remember, money market only has debt capital instruments. And finally, ownership of the shareholder comes with two rights to that shareholder. One is right for residual claimant. Now, if a company is winding up, if they are closing down the company, let's say I am the owner of that company. Obvious, you will think because I'm the owner of the company, I can take all the money that is left. No, that doesn't work in practical. Now, imagine if that's the scenario, everyone will start a business, borrow money, bankrupt the company, take all the money left and run away. Okay. So to avoid that, you have an understanding or you have a matrix. In that matrix, when a company is going in for liquidation, very first payment would be the salary of the staff, or any salary dues of that staff is paid off. Then you have any dues to EPF or ETF. Then you have the secured debt holders being paid. Then you have the unsecured debt holders paid. Then you have the creditors paid. So you have a matrix as such, or a pyramid. Owners are the last to receive the money on liquidation. Why? You are the owner of the company. You should be willing and able to bear up the risk. Therefore, shareholder becomes the residual payment. Now, this is not always negative. Let's take a company which has been doing so well, but for some reason you have to wind up. Okay. Then on liquidation, you might earn a much higher value than the investment amount, pay off all the debts available, and still come with a gain. Okay. Finally, you have right to vote. Shareholders have rights to vote at the annual general meeting of the company. They have the right to vote to appoint directors, to renew share auditors, okay, to have any changes in the articles, to give the ideas of any share issues, okay. So this right to vote is an important feature available to the shareholders. This right to vote might not be available for certain shares if they are non-voting shares. That when we go through, I will explain that. There are two types of shares. One share is a voting share and one share is a non-voting share. So if you buy the non-voting share, you don't have the right to vote, even though you are a shareholder. Now, we know shares are riskier investments. Why? Both the cash flows are uncertain. But still, so many issuers prefer equity. Why? Why is equity favored as a source of financing rather than debt? Okay, that's what we're going to look at. You have two major reasons. The very first one is to grow and to expand the business in a larger scale. Equity is an important source of financing. Now you will be wondering, you could do the same with debt. Why are we mentioning this as an importance in equity? Now this is important in equity because you have a lot of startups. If you have a startup company, equity infusion is an important occurrence. It can happen from share entrepreneurs or the owner's own funds. Okay. So by putting in equity for a newly formed company or a struggling company, let's say, it will help the company expand and take additional risk. Now remember, when you go for debt, it comes with covenants. No? Will the issuer of let's say I have borrowed funds. Okay, I have borrowed funds and I want to launch a new product line. This product is not at all available in Sri Lanka, brand new product. Okay, and I want to manufacture that. If I go to a bank, then bank will ask 100 questions from me. Do you have prior experience? Because it's a lot of risk that the businessman is taking up. Okay, because it's a lot of risk taken up. They will have a possibility of losing their money. So for that, they are very scared. But if it's equity, if the business owner is bringing in their own equity, they are willing to face any additional risk because it's their own decisions. Okay. So for a company which is at the growth stage, equity is a very important source of financing. Then you have companies do not have to pay back the capital or make scheduled payments. Now, especially again, if you are a growing company and you have to have monthly capital repayment or interest repayment, it will weigh down on the company's cash flows. Why? Rather than doing the business or putting money into the business, you have to keep repaying the loan that you took last year. Okay. Therefore, because you don't have to pay back at the end, it's an important benefit to the company. Not only that, the investment amount, not only the investment amount, you don't have to pay back at the end like a debt situation. Now, if you are taking a loan, or let's take a debenture, if you have issued a debenture, you have to pay back the entire debenture capital at the end of 5 years, if for an example. Okay. Now that is not available for equity. You take the money as equity that is invested in the company. You don't have to pay back to the shareholder ever. You don't have to make any, you are not compulsory to make any dividend payment. But for debt financing, you have to pay back the capital that you borrowed, and you have to pay back interest, which is a must. You cannot default it or delay that. Okay. Again, due to this, equity is considered as a much more favored source of financing, especially by growing businesses. Then we have the basic differences between equity and debt. I'm pretty sure you could go through that. We have discussed that earlier as well. And I want to clear this particular terms. Stated capital and market capitalization. What is stated capital? Stated capital is the face or the par value of the shares which are issued to the shareholders. Okay. This is not influenced by the market occurrences. This value remains the same. This is the face value of the share into the shares issued. This does not change at all unless you do a new share issue or you do a share buyback or something like that. But if anything happens in the market for the market price of the shares, it doesn't impact the stated capital. Then you have market capitalization. What is this market capitalization? It is the market value of a company's shares listed in the stock exchange. So how do you find the market capitalization? You have the number of shares which are listed into the market value per share. Okay. By multiplying that, you will get the market capitalization. Now let's go to if you take this company, market capitalization is 24.1. Okay. But here you can see for the company, stated capital is only 9 billion. What is the market capitalization? 24.1 billion. Highly different. And this will change every day. Now, because on Friday, market 10 price was 24.1, market capitalization is 24.1. let's say price of this share comes to 10 rupees, then market capitalization will be around 10 billion. Okay. So depending how the price changes, the market capitalization will change. But here in stated capital, no. Irrespective of any changes, stated capital of the company will be unaffected. So they have given you the two formulas to calculate that as well. And there's a small question for you to try. Then we move to equity instruments. Equity instruments are mainly two types, ordinary shares and the preference shares. Okay. Now, apart from these two, you have certain modern instruments coming into the market called convertible debt. Again, convertible debt also on maturity will get converted as equity. So on maturity onwards, it will get categorized as an equity instrument. Okay. Ordinary shares, we all know this. Ordinary shares represent the ownership interest of the company. If you buy this share, essentially you are like the owner of that company, at least to a part of it. Okay. And if you are the owner of the company, dividend payment to you is not compulsory. Okay. Dividend payment is not compulsory for you. You are the residual claimant and you have the voting rights usually. Okay. Now these ordinary shares can be split into two, voting ordinary shares or non-voting ordinary shares. So if there is an ordinary share with with no voting component or voting capability, it's a non-voting share. Voting ordinary share or a voting share is an ordinary share with the voting right at the board meetings. Preference shares. Here, this is another type of equity, but it's more of a hybrid instrument. Why? Even though on a legal and a tax view, preference share is considered as equity, it has several features which make it more similar to debt. We are going to see 4 of them. First one is constant dividend payment. Now this is also shares, right? Therefore here the payment is called dividend payment, correct? But ordinary shareholders didn't know when they will get dividend, but preference shareholders have a predetermined dividend payment rate. Okay, so according to that amount, the dividend is paid without any delay. Then you have the change or the impact on the preference share prices. Now, because the dividend is more certain, prices of preference shares remain stable. It doesn't vary much. Okay. Then preference shareholders do not have the voting right unless the predetermined constant dividend payment is not paid out correctly. So if the company fails to make the promised dividend payment, then the preference shareholders will get the right at the board meeting. Finally, preference shareholders hold a claim on assets which is as on a priority than the ordinary shareholders. But again, because they are shareholders, they are treated after settling for all creditors and the debt holders. Now, if you take the matrix, I told you, staff, EPF, ETF, secured debt holders, unsecured debt holders, then you will have preference shareholders, and finally is when you will have the ordinary shareholders. Okay. And remember, dividend of a preference shareholder is treated similar to the ordinary shareholders' dividend. Those are not tax deductible, and because of that, this instrument or the preference share is considered of high cost. One is the dividend payment cannot be deducted. Okay, and it's a predetermined dividend rate. You cannot change constantly. Okay, and due to those, the preference share is usually having a higher cost than debt instrument. Okay, and because preference share have features from both, it's considered as a hybrid instrument. Then we have depository receipts. This is also a equity instrument, but it's a very novel equity instrument. I don't have the time to go through that because it's a very new product that has, it's a new investment vehicle that's there in the international arena. Okay. So next week, let's start the lecture from depository receipts and move on. Okay. Thank you so much for listening. Let's meet again next week.